Welcome to Pearisburg First United Methodist Church. Thank you for joining us for worship. I know you made a choice to come here. I want to ask you a favor right now. Not for me, but for you. Take your cell phone. You're probably watching me on the cell phone. I understand that part. But can you just put some other distractions away and say, this time right now, for these next 30 minutes or so, I want to focus on what God might be saying to me. Perhaps you want to grab a candle and light a candle and say, hey, I'm ready to set aside some time here. And I'm going to signify by lighting a candle or something else. Just say, this is God's time right now. This is God's time when I want to hear what God says to me. Because I'm tired of being alone. I'm tired of feeling like the promise that God gave to me has disappeared. And I want God's vision to come out from me once again. And I want to see the flame. I want to see the light. And I want to go forward. Amen. Chapter 11 of Numbers is not boring. It's got action. It's got quail. Yep, quail, real life quail. It's got people muttering. It's got the fire of God coming down. It's got Moses getting very frustrated. And it has the Lord speaking and the power of the Holy Spirit descending. And there's a message in there for us. And often I've read it and I just see the grumbling, the complaining, and the quail. And I've missed the other meaning. So I want you to hear that. But as we look at chapter 11, I want you to realize that this starts a whole sequence of stories in which every group inside of the people of Israel, they all get together and say, we're not happy. And they complain and they grumble, and God responds. Would you hear these selected verses from Numbers chapter 11? The rabble with them began to crave other food. And again, the Israelites started wailing and said, if only we had meat to eat. We remember the fish we ate in Egypt at no cost. Also the cucumbers, melons, leeks, onions, and garlic. But now we've lost our appetite. We never see anything but this manna. Moses heard the people of every family wailing at the entrance to their tents. The Lord became exceedingly angry, and Moses was troubled. He asked the Lord, why have you brought this trouble on your servant? What have I done to displease you that you put the burden of all these people on me? Did I conceive all these people? Did I give them birth? Why did you tell me to carry them in my arms, as a nurse carries an infant, to the land you promised on oath to their ancestors? Where can I get meat for all these people? They keep wailing to me, give us meat to eat, give us meat, give us meat. I cannot carry all these people by myself. The burden is too heavy for me. If this is how you're going to treat me, go ahead, kill me. If I have found favor in your eyes, and do not let my face own ruin. The Lord said to Moses, bring me 70 of Israel's elders, who are known to you as leaders and officials among the people. Have them come to the tent of meeting, that they may stand there with you. So Moses went out and told the people what the Lord had said. He brought together 70 of the elders and had them stand around the tent. And the Lord came down in a cloud and spoke with him. And he took some of the power of the Spirit that was on Moses and put it on the 70 elders. When the Spirit rested on them, they prophesied, but they did not do so again. However, 2 men, whose names were Eldad and Medad, had remained in the camp. They were listed among the elders, but did not go out to the tent. But the Spirit also rested on them, and they prophesied in the camp. A young man ran and told Moses, Eldad and Medad are prophesying in the camp. Joshua, son of Nun, who had been the aide of Moses since youth, spoke up and said, Moses, my Lord, stop them. But Moses replied, Are you jealous for my sake? I wish that all the Lord's people were prophets, and the Lord would put his Spirit on them. And then Moses and the elders of Israel returned to the camp. Well, this sermon's not made for this place. This sermon, we're going on the road. Brian Stafford and I are heading out of this place, and we'll let you catch up with us and enjoy us at a place where I enjoy my friends. See you over there.
Letting go of every single dream, I lay each one down at your feet. Every moment of my wandering never changes what you see. I've tried to win this war, I confess. My hands are weary, I need your rest. Mighty warrior, king of the fight, no matter what I face, you're by my side. When you don't move the mountains, I needed you to move. When you don't part the waters, I wish I could walk through. When you don't give the answers as I cry out to you, I will trust, I will trust, I will trust in you. Truth is, you know what tomorrow brings. There's not a day ahead you have not seen, no. So in all things, be my life and breath. I want what you want, Lord, and nothing less. When you don't move the mountains, I'm needing you to move. When you don't part the waters, I wish I could walk through. When you don't give the answers as I cry out to you, I will trust, I will trust, I will trust in you. I will trust in you. You are my strength and comfort. You are my steady hand. You are my firm foundation, the rock on which I stand. Your ways are always higher. Your plans are always good. There's not a place where I'll go you've not already stood. When you don't move the mountains, I'm needing you to move. You don't part the waters, I wish I could walk through. When you don't give the answers as I cry out to you, I will trust, I will trust, I will trust in you. I will trust in you. I will trust in you.
Hey, I brought you tonight to La Bronca. And why did I come to La Bronca? Because this is where I come with my friends. We come here and we complain. We come here and we encourage one another and support one another. Tonight I'm here with my friend Brian Stafford. You can't see him. He's behind the camera. He's doing all the videoing tonight. But we came here tonight because that's where I come when I needed to be with a friend. And that's what Numbers 11 is about. Numbers chapter 11 has lots of adventure and lots of action, but it's about what you do when you need a friend. And how does God speak to you during that time? Let's talk about the two different storylines, because there are two plots going on in this section. The first thing is we've got the people, the rabble as they start off, who have the complaints. Let's put it in perspective. How would you like to eat some nachos tonight? Yeah, I got some salsa here too. I've already had some. There's not much left. nachos and salsa. Now, they're great. But what if you had to eat it for breakfast, lunch, and supper, day in and day out, and you've been doing it now for a whole year? I bet you would be ready for some shrimp tacos. You would do anything to trade out the shrimp tacos for the nachos, wouldn't you? Because you're ready for a change. Did you know it's kind of like when you eat turkey on Thanksgiving weekend, you have turkey for Thanksgiving Day, the day after, the day after. Finally, by Saturday night, you just want a pizza, don't you? Anything besides turkey. Well, that's what the Israelites are up to. They have now been traveling with God for a whole year, and God has been providing them manna, an interesting substance. They've been having boiled, baked, fried manna for breakfast, lunch, and supper 7 days a week for the last year, and they're tired of it. And the Back to Egypt committee, as my friend calls it, is getting a little more rambunctious. They said, we want to go back to the old stuff. We want to go back to where we had cucumbers. Yeah, they'd rather have cucumbers than the food God provides. They want leeks and onions, and they want fish, because the fish was free, because it came right out of the Nile River. And that's what they want. Yep, they're tired of the chips. They want something else. And you know what? I understand that. But the problem is they seem to have forgotten some stuff. There in Egypt, they were slaves. Yes, they were slaves. They didn't have any choice what they did. They were told when to work. They were told how much to work. They were told they had too many kids and they had to throw their children into the Nile River and die. But they said, let's go back to Egypt. At least we weren't eating the same food every day. I know that feeling going back. We like to go back to the good old days. There's a little bit of all of us who wants to go back to when times were simpler. Let's go back to 1950. Remember 1950? Some of you all remember 1950. Some of you all remember the TVs you had back then. And you were excited to get that 12-inch TV. Don't you remember it? That RCA TV. It was a 12-inch screen. Came in black and white. Had channels 2 through 13, and you got up and you spun the dial to get from one channel to the next. Well, that cost $199 for that fancy TV. And in those days, on a minimum wage, in 6 weeks, you could save up enough money to buy your own TV. Compare that to now. Compare that to now, you can buy a 49-inch TV with 5,000 channels, including streaming with the internet on all sorts of devices. You can have it voice activated. You can say, turn on ESPN or the Disney Network, and it'll automatically change channels for you. And you can pay for that on minimum wage now with working 4 whole days. Do you really want to go back to the good old days? I know. There was something about them, isn't there? There's something about those good old days that were happy days, weren't they? We think back to things of the past. We think back to days before air conditioning and dishwashers. And yet, things have changed. In 1967, there were wars. There were civil riots in all our major cities. We were involved in the Vietnam War. And things have changed since then. The average life expectancy in the United States is now 7 years longer. Life is better. There's less poverty, less crime. Yes, crime rates are radically down. The only thing that's not so good now, it's intriguing when you look at the number of newspaper stories and TV stories. You know, you'll see one every now and then about somebody who did something cool, about some sort of fluff piece, you might call it, about somebody who did something good or something that makes your heart feel good. You say, that's a nice heartwarming piece. The number of those pieces that are carried in the news has steadily dropped since 1945. And since the end of the Cold War, it's gone down faster every year. You see, the news is more negative now than it was then. The focus is on all the things that are wrong. That's all you hear about. It's all the things that are wrong. And that's what the people of Israel were focusing on. They had quit focusing on the fact that they had a God who had brought them out of Egypt out of Egypt. They had quit focusing on the fact they had a promise of a land flowing with milk and honey. They had given up on the idea they were going to go back to the land of Abraham and Sarah, Isaac and Rebekah and Jacob and his wives. They had forgotten they were going to go back to a land that was their own land, where they could be free. They could live however they chose to. They had given up on the promise, and all they could focus now was the past. And suddenly slavery sounded better than the promise they had been given. Perhaps as a parent who's gone to work all day and come home and bathed the kids and fed the kids and cooked the supper and cleaned up the supper and helped the kids with all their homework and put them to bed and had 15 minutes before you had time for you to go to bed yourself, and you're thinking, there's got to be something better than this. Or perhaps you're one of our senior citizens and you are so tired of your children and grandchildren treating you like a 3-year-old, asking, are you wearing your mask yet? Are you putting it on the right way? Are you protecting yourself? You're tired of being treated like that. You're tired of being separated from your friends and not being able to go wherever you want to go. You want to get out with your friends. You want to do things the way you've always wanted to. And you're ready to go back to a land that was before this. I understand. Now we're going to come back to God's response to that in just a second. But I want to tell you about the other part of this message going on here. I want to tell you about Moses. Moses hears all the grumbling, all the complaining. And remember, we're going to hear a lot of grumbling and complaining in this section of Numbers. Everybody grumbles and complains during this section of Numbers. And Moses is tired of it. And he goes to God and says, Lord, these are your people. You made them. I'm tired of being the foster parent for these people. They're your kids. Moses is tired of dealing with God's people. He is tired of being the foster parent for them. And he says, I want out. I can begin to imagine Moses right now saying, I'm ready. I'm going to put together my resume tonight. Let's see here. Let's get a little sob story going here. I was born as a Hebrew slave. That gets me points right there. In fact, I was thrown into the river because my parents didn't have any choice. Yep, that looks good in the resume right there. I was raised up in the home of Pharaoh. Yeah, I got a great education. That looks good on the resume. I know all the things there. I've been educated really well. I know how to live the good life. Let's see here. And then I committed murder. Well, I may not want to put that in the resume. And then I herded sheep for 40 years. That's kind of the boring section. And then I went back to Egypt and I led a people in revolt. I did a civil uprising. In fact, I'm not allowed back in Egypt right now. Never will be. You know, there's just not a lot of options for me. Who's going to hire a guy who's out of work, whose specialty is causing troubles? You know, Lord, I don't like this plan. I didn't sign up for this. You're the one that brought me here, and I'm not happy, God. You know, I've been watching a TV show called Alone. It's about, they take 12 folks and put them out in the middle of the Canadian wilderness and see how they survive up there. Now, the good news was the season I watched, the guy I really liked, he won. He was the last one left. The discouraging part of the show was when they started talking about how they felt, because each person was out there by themselves. They didn't have any email, didn't have phones they would call and check out their spouses every day and their family. They were stuck out there in the middle of the wilderness with just a handful of survival skills and tools to keep them going. And they were lonely. And listening to them talk every time, you realized how lonely they really were. It was depressing. It really was. Now, the good news is they weren't completely alone. They had a satellite phone to call if things got in trouble. And they got random physical checkups to make sure they were okay medically. But the bottom line was they were alone, and that's how Moses felt right then and there. He says, I am completely alone. You know, every morning I get out, ready to go in the morning, I grab my wallet, I grab my keys, grab my cell phone, and I think, I got my glasses, I had to go find those every day. Today I had to go back in and get my mask. Left the house without it. How many times have you done that? I bet you're getting tired of it, aren't you? Well, let's talk about what God says to the people. Let's talk about what God says to Moses, because that's the good news, and that's the news I want you to hear. First off, to the people of Israel, he has a simple answer. He says, my arm, it's not short, it's long. I can provide. There's nothing out there I can't take care of. There's a Hebrew phrase called Jehovah Jireh. It means the Lord will provide. It's a statement that says no matter what situation you're in, God can provide. It's a lesson you see throughout the Old Testament. It's a lesson I've seen in my own life. I've discovered numerous times when there just didn't seem to be any way, God has provided. He's taken the situations around me, the situations around you, and communities just like ours and said, I can take care of that. That's not too hard for me. For the people of Israel who are tired of eating all those chips, ours will keep disappearing. He says, I've got it. I've got it. I'm going to provide for you quail. I'm going to provide so much in quail, you're going to eat quail for the next 30 days. It's going to be coming out your nostrils. You're going to be sick and tired of this stuff because you wanted meat. And guess what? I'm going to take care of that for you. I really am. So you know beyond all doubt that I can provide. Then he speaks to Moses. He says, Moses, I know something. I know that you did what I told you to. Your father-in-law Jethro, you were overworked, you were burnt out, and you were getting exhausted. And because of him, you provided some folks. And you set up judges to take care of the 10, the 100, the 1,000, so that only the big, huge cases come to you. And you were no longer worn out from taking care of the people. But I realize you need more than just assistance. You need spiritual supporters. I'm bringing 70 folks along with you. And their primary job is to let you know that, guess what? There is some spiritual support for you. These 70 are going to be there to remind you. And I'm bringing you here with them right now. And when I finish speaking to them, my spirit is going to pour out on them, and they will speak in tongues. It didn't happen in Pentecost for the first time. It happens right here in the middle of the desert. And 70 people that day spoke in tongues, including 2 cool guys with awesome names. Medad and Eldad. What great names. They were out there and they spoke in tongues too. And all the folks wondered what was going on, because right then they realized that God had set 70 folks around Moses to make sure he knows that he's not alone. He's got folks out there right there with him. That reminds me of how we're going to deal with church right now. I know the days of having big, huge church services are probably over for right now. The idea of gathering with several hundred people inside the sanctuary, it's not going to happen. That's why we had the parking lot service. That's why we had the sanctuary service. And that's why we're doing services online, so that you can experience God in small groups. We're going to keep finding more ways to do that, because it's in the small groups with your friends that you're reminded that you're not alone, that God is still with you very, very much. What you need to hear, Numbers chapter 11, is God had a plan and a promise for the people of Israel. That included the people of Israel. It included Moses himself. And the question was, were they going to accept that plan? There's an interesting play on words here, because the same Hebrew word means wind and spirit. And the wind of God brought forth the quail and provided for them. And the same wind, that Ruach, the Spirit of God, provided for Moses. And my prayer for us is right now that the wind, the Spirit of God, might come upon us and remind us that God has a plan and a purpose for us, and take care of us from this point forward.